and it will be time to highlight why mobile search should be a part of your marketing strategy. And so today we'll be covering mobile search strategy. Before I do get started, I would like to go through a few items so that you know how to participate in today's webinar. You will have the opportunity to submit questions just by typing in your question into the pane on the right-hand side of your screen. So feel free to submit questions anytime during the presentation. We'll collect them and address them at the end. We will be recording today's session and a playback link will be shared with all who registered. So I would like to introduce our speaker for today, Alice Almeida, who is our Manager of Innovation and Insight. Over to you, Alice.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you to everyone for joining me today. I'm hoping that 11 a.m. is a more suitable time. So for those that are listening in, if you could let us know if this time is more suitable than 2 p.m., that would be wonderful. So as Helen said, we decided to include mobile search as our next webinar because we saw that mobile search is completely starting to trump desktop search. We wanted to get a better understanding of why. So we've done quite an in-depth analysis of this, so I will try not to bore you all with all these insights, but if you have any questions at all, as Helen mentioned, please chuck it into the question pane. So what we're going to cover today is, first up, an introduction to Audience View. So Audience View is our new offering that we launched at the end of last year. We got a little bit of feedback from our last webinar that there were clients who were unsure about what Audience View does and how they can access it. So I'm just going to briefly touch on that. We're then going to look at the importance of understanding mobile search, how mobile search and desktop search differ. Then we've selected 4 industries that we're going to have an in-depth look at, so travel, retail, automotive and finance. Now I have chucked into on a little side note, I had some real from obviously we would like to see any of your particular for you. Then looking at understanding the search language and why that's important, and then I'm just going to close the presentation with some tips and summaries, so the findings from this report. First of all, Audience View. As I mentioned, it launched at the end of last year. So Audience View is our new fancy insights tool, and it's basically where you can go to look at market sizing, brand strategy, find insights for media planning, audience engagement, all of those things at the bottom of the screen there. But basically the most powerful thing that it does is you can build your audience segments, and from that you can get a stronger understanding of who your actual audience are, what websites they're visiting, what search terms they're using, how many of them are going to your competitors, so you can actually come up with a unique number for your customers, which helps with loyalty. So we have a 1 million person panel, which is the largest in Australia. This is across 170 categories, 3.7 million websites and 45 million searches. So this is just a screenshot of the profile section within Audience View. As you can see from this, you get age, gender, state and also household income. Really nice snapshot to be able to say this is who your actual audience is. We can also do a website analysis. So as you can see from this report, this is a website ranking report. It's for the automotive industry. This is just to give you a little bit of snapshot. So obviously from that you can see total visits, the visit share, and then you get the desktop mobile split, which is actually really important with any kind of marketing strategy. I think the most insightful and beneficial is the search analysis. The amount of search data that we collect is huge, and from that you can get a really true understanding of what your audience is actually in the market for, any kind of restrictions that they're having. This is also where we get the competitive intelligence from. So, you know, if people are going there and they're clicking on your brand or your website, you know, where else are they going for, what else are they searching for? So this is where the search analysis comes through. So as I mentioned, that was a very brief snapshot on Audience View, but I just wanted to kind of highlight and showcase where we're getting our data from. So then we'll go into the importance of understanding mobile search. So mobile is now used more than desktop. This is not surprising. It was actually, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day and they said to me, oh, you can reach me on my landline. And that is a statement that I have probably not heard for 10 or 15 years. And when I questioned them, why do you have a landline? They said, well, you know, I'm not really into the whole mobile thing. Now, this person is obviously a very unique example because majority of Australians are now more likely to be using their mobile than a desktop. So in summary, there's over 16 million Australians online in July. And of the split of that, 50.2% was the mobile share and 49.8% was the desktop share. So this is a trend that we're seeing throughout this year. Nearly every month this year, mobile has held a stronger share than desktop. It's only slight, but when you think about it, for the past as many years as I can remember, maybe 6 to 8 years, it's been the year of the mobile. Now, this is a really interesting statement in itself about being the year of the mobile, because every year it is the year of the mobile for consumers, but where we are falling through is brands utilising mobile and including it in their marketing strategy. So whilst we are saying that all these consumers are on their mobile device, it doesn't necessarily mean that all the brands are following them, and hopefully this presentation today can help you with any kind of hesitation or setback that you're experiencing. So search is still king. So obviously predominantly Google is quite a big monster when it comes to search. Just in the month of July there were 13.8 million unique visits to Google. That's over 1 billion total visits overall, and it was the most visited website overall globally. And you know, this is not a surprise at all. So when having a look at search and visitation, you can see here that 58% have come from their mobile and 42% have come from their desktop. So once again, mobile search is really starting to hold its ground here. One thing I wanted to have a quick look at is whether or not there's seasonality with search. And this search is obviously heavily led by external factors such as any kind of breaking news, any kind of, you know, for example, last week, the Bachelor finale, you know, don't cringe, but that actually increased the search volumes there. And in this example, in January and April of this year, we're seeing big spikes within those 2 months. On further analysis, I had a look at that, and that is school holiday period, and that's when a lot of parents were going onto search and trying to find activities to keep their kids entertained, or they were looking for last-minute holidays. So when you have a look at a spike of a month like that, it's good to kind of analyse what are the search terms that's pushing that increase. And now this chart here, everyone that knows me knows that I love a good Wordle. This is just basically, I took the search term shoe, and I chucked it into Audience View, and it gave me every single word that's associated with the search term shoe within July. And as you can see, this is basically just a data dump. The most commonly used word with the term shoe is Australia, so that, you know, makes me think that people like to buy within Australia. Shoe size. So size was also an interesting one because size converter was probably the key element here. So for any of you that have tried to buy shoes with overseas shoe sizes, it can actually be quite confusing. But then there's like men's, basketball, running, cheap, Nike. So these are where some of the brand names come out, and this is where you get some really key insights as to what people are looking for when they're searching for shoes. So now we're going to have a look at how mobile search differs from desktop search. So interestingly enough, there were 3 key factors which jumped out at me when I analysed the data. And I think the first one is mobile search is very much a question device. So people were going there and saying how to, where is, what is, and can I. They were wanting immediate answers straight away that would help them how to bake a cake, or where is the closest chemist. So these question searches were really kind of coming up trumps. The second thing is mobile search is used last minute. So, and it's used for research, reviews, and price comparison. So if you think about your own behaviours, I might take this picture for example. I might be in a wine store, see a bottle of wine that is on sale, and I want to get a price comparison to see whether this is the best price. I want to know whether that year is a good year for that wine. I want to read reviews on what people think about that wine. And more people are doing this in store, and this is where mobile search is becoming key. But I think the most interesting finding that I got from this is the mobile device is an incredibly personal device. A lot of people will have some kind of security system, so whether it's a PIN, whether it's now fingerprint, whether it's some kind of swipe code, whatever it is, it's a very private device. This is basically the diary, the personal diary, 2016. A lot of the searches that we found on the mobile device were things that you would not openly talk to people about. It was things that you might be embarrassed about. There was things that you don't want people seeing that you're searching for. So I found some really raw personal search terms, which I have covered a little bit. Obviously, this is probably a topic in itself, but today I've just briefly touched on it. So they were the 3 key findings that I found from the search. Now let's get into the industry stuff. So I think from an industry snapshot for all mobile search, it's interesting to see that a fair chunk of them are now searched for more on a mobile device than a desktop device. So food and beverage came up trumps with 65%, and the one that was a bit of a surprise and a bit interesting was banking and entertainment. So when it comes to entertainment, this actually doesn't include in-app stuff. So a lot of people have entertainment apps already on their phone, so they might not actually be searching for that content. Same thing with banks. You know, a lot of people will have banking apps, so they won't actually be searching on their mobile device. So food and beverage, news and media, health, sports, automotive, retail and lifestyle. A retail, travel, auto and banking. But just because there was some really good insights in it, I wanted to briefly touch on food and beverage, but also health, because health is the one that's really going back to that privacy and personal thing that I was talking about before. So let's get into this. The first up is retail search. So on the left is more likely to be on the desktop, and on the right is more likely to be on the mobile device, and it's the percentage share in the middle. So let's start off with retail overall. So retail currently sits at 54% across all retail search term variations. But then I wanted to get an idea, okay, so the retail category is incredibly broad. What topics within retail search are more likely to be searched for on a mobile or more likely to be searched on the desktop? So from this, and excuse me, this is quite cluttered, but there's quite a lot to cover within mobile retail search. Near me is the top theme that comes up. So when people are out and about, they're wanting to find a Bunnings near them, a Woolworths near them, a Country Road near them. So anything like, a lot of it's store location things, a lot of it is, you know, they want to know where the closest supermarket is. The next thing that came up was lay-by and afterpay. So afterpay is something that I've only become aware of in the last couple of months, and it's now huge. It's rolled out across quite a lot of brands, and afterpay basically allows you to collect the product and pay it off over time, where lay-by is the opposite. You pay it off over time and then you get the product. So afterpay is becoming huge. Now a lot of the search terms around afterpay is what is, but obviously it's a new product, so people are still trying to get their head around how to use it. Opening hours is also something that, you know, it wasn't a surprise. Supermarket catalogs. Now this came up as a big surprise for me because I wasn't aware that people searched for supermarket catalogs, but clearly they do. And then obviously the price comparison, location, and sales and discounts. In regards to what's more likely to be done on desktop, there wasn't too many key themes on the desktop, but retailer catalogs are more likely to be looked at on a desktop than a mobile, and also feedback and complaints. Now, whenever I do insights, I like to think of my own behaviour and how I do things. When I'm complaining about poor customer service, there's nothing more satisfying than actually hitting out a keyboard and being able to put in a lot of context within your complaint. And I think that's where the desktop comes in trumps here, because you're wanting to be able to get everything out, and it's much easier to type on a desktop. When we look at Down on a product level on the retail side, it's private purchases are searched for on mobiles. So once again, retail overall is at 54%. Now, these are key things that I found within mobile. The number one is adult. Now, the adult industry is something that's not really discussed very much, and it's something that's always coming up in search data or any kind of research data for that fact, especially when it comes to online. So 84% of all retail adult searches are done on their mobile phone. Once again, whole privacy, personal thing coming there. Engagement ring, 79% on their mobile phone. Majority of households will share a laptop or a desktop, so you obviously want to keep that kind of search history very private. But also then you've got technology products as well. Then on the desktop, what's more likely to be searched for, we break it down, it's wine, white goods, clothing, flowers or a florist, and cosmetics. So more of the products that you might kind of surf and browse are more likely to be done on the desktop. So mobile is all about immediacy and intimacy. As you saw, near me was the top search term theme within retail. What are some of the things that are more likely within that search term theme to be done on a mobile? They're looking for chemists, supermarkets, and bottle shops. Very important, that final one. Desktops are more likely to be hardware store, pet stores, or electronic stores. Then if we look at lay-by and afterpay, people are looking for quick loans on their mobile phone and store-specific lay-by. This is really interesting because people, once again, I think of my own shopping habits. If I go into a shop and, you know, there's something that I really, really want, or there's something that I really need, and you don't have the funds, the first thing you'll do is, how can I get the funds? Or what are the rules behind the lay-by within this particular brand? More likely to be on desktop are personal loans, which are a little bit larger, but once again, as I said, also Afterpay. This was purely because people were trying to learn all about Afterpay. Then we look at sale, and what products within the term sale are people searching for on their mobile? Baby products and toys. So obviously parents are searching heavily for toy sales, baby product sales on their mobile, but also furniture. However, on the desktop, it's more likely to be shoes, car products, and clothing. And once again, adults. So not much searching for adult product goes on the desktop. However, a lot of it is done on their mobile, and this is where they're looking for adult stores, adult toys, and sexy lingerie. So this is something that actually came up quite strong in the results. So I couldn't look over this category. Then we go into travel search. So mobile search stimulates and updates. So for anyone that's planning a holiday, I don't know if you do this, but I'll jump on my mobile and just go to Google Images and type in the destination and sit there and dream about the destination. Same kind of thing here. So travel overall is at 47%. However, when you look at what they're actually looking for on their mobile phones, flight status, best time to visit, flight from, places to eat, near me comes up again, last minute and sale, and also things to do. So a lot of this behaviour is to kind of stimulate and to get updates once they've actually booked and paid for. The near me one is interesting because that came up quite a lot with actions that you'd take when you're actually at the destination, and I'll go into that in a second. So if those searches that are more likely to be done on the desktop, so best and accommodation. Now, best is something that was heavily used within travel. So people are looking for the best accommodation, the best restaurants, the best Thai, the best car rental. So the word best is coming up really, really strongly. Then there's cruises, destination-specific information, currency conversion, and specific map searches. So specific map searches are, map of Main Street on Norfolk Island. I'm just going to use that for a bit of a plug. So people actually typing in the destination specific and an area within that. So as I mentioned before, travel search on mobile doesn't stop when they're on holiday. So near me comes up again quite strongly, and what they're looking for is public toilets, hotels, and car rental. Well, they're more likely to do on the desktop is gyms and laundromats, and a lot of this is, I would assume, is done before they're actually on holiday. The word best, again, as I mentioned, so these were some of the strongest keyword themes within best, and it was meal, Italian, and high tea. Then on the desktop, it was more likely to be the best travel insurance and the best flights. Sale was another interesting one. So people were looking for the airline birthday sale, domestic airfare sale, and also activity discounts was a huge one. In fact, things like zoos and theme parks were very big in this area. However, more likely to be done on the desktop was international sales, discount flights, and cruise sales. And then for anything destination specific, those that were more likely to do research through search on their mobile, were looking at things like Kentucky Asia, Asia Travel, and Kentucky USA. So this would strongly be associated with those that were searching for the Kentucky product, which is under the age of 34. So that's not a surprise at all. More likely to be on the desktop was car rental, flights to the USA, and regions within New Zealand. So this is more of the heavy research kind of stuff where they're planning, they're price comparing, etc. Now if we have a look at automotive search. So in automotive, they're needing answers and assistance for mobile. So automotive overall sits at 55%. Once again, when you break that down, it starts to tell a different kind of story or a more interesting story. Near me comes up again really, really strong. 94%. It's one of the strongest across all the industries. Secure parking's at 78, petrol prices at 73, roadside assistance, mechanic and used car are all over 50%. However, when you look at the desktop, interestingly enough, buying a new car is more likely to be done on a desktop than a mobile. Look, seeking out insurance and quotes for insurance is more likely to be done on the desktop. Price comparison is also more likely to be done on the desktop, and feedback. But the interesting thing here and the point to highlight is if you were to pick up the term parking, you obviously have secure parking, which is at 78% mobile, and then you've got airport parking, which is at 22% mobile. So this tells me that just with the search terms parking, they're very, very different uses. So obviously airport parking is something that you plan and you research, you know, how much is it going to cost me, usually an arm and a leg. And then you've got secure parking, which you need to find probably when you're going reasonably quickly to a destination or when you're at the destination and you need to find somewhere to park. So by understanding how different terms are actually used is vitally important when picking your search terms. So mobile search for automotive is not really used as a research tool, and I'll explain that why. Once again, near me came up trumps, but what they're looking for is the best petrol price, and this was huge. I didn't realise so many people will seek out the best petrol price and drive to that station to fill up, even if it is 40 kilometres away. They want a car wash, secure parking, and specific dealers. So this is where they might be going, you know, Arts Harman, Volkswagen Arts Harman, and they'll put in those informations. In the desktop, they're looking for mechanic, they're wanting information on airport parking, but they're also looking at car dealerships, and this is where they'll put it in a broader sense. So they'll type in Volkswagen dealerships, so they won't actually put a suburb next to it or the name of the dealership. It's as broad as that. So when it comes to services, mobile mechanic, NRMA roadside assistance and quick car loans are more likely to be done on the search for on their mobile. That makes sense. If you're out and about and your car breaks down, you obviously don't have a desktop to search for NRMA roadside assistance. But those things that are more likely to be done on the desktop is car insurance, car registration and driving tests. And these are all things that people have actively searched for within this category. When you look at models, used cars, as I said, are more likely to be searched for on your mobile, a discount or a sale, and interestingly enough, mobile skewed slightly towards those looking to buy a car or a motorbike. However, when you look at desktop, they were more likely to be looking for new cars. They were looking at next year's models. So the 2017 model came up really high in a lot of the searches, and they're also looking at trucks and vans, more likely on desktop. And then reviews. So they're looking at car and SUV reviews on their mobile, but then when it comes down to actual automotive products, they're going to their desktop for that. And the last category is banking and finance search. And as you remember, banking and finance overall achieved quite a relatively low mobile search result of 40%. When we break it down, once again, it tells a really interesting story. So debt was one of the most common themes on the mobile phone at 87%. So going back to that whole privacy and personal device, people aren't comfortable talking about if they're in debt, so they're actually seeking out information on search to help them either get out of debt, you know, to put plans in place, or even to, you know, get information on companies that can help them get out of debt. They're wanting quick loans as well, personal loans, loan calculators, where the closest ATM is, savings account, and credit cards. Then when you look at desktop, they're looking at things like interest rates, stock market, currency converter, tax, and also a bank location. So a bank location performs quite poorly on mobile search at 15%, but that's because not many people visit branches anymore these days. It's very rare that you have to actually go into a branch to do something. A lot of stuff is done within the app now, so that wasn't a surprise. So when it comes to finance and mobile search, it's all about privacy and quick research. They're wanting to quickly look at loans. They're wanting to quickly find out ways that they can get out of debt. So if we have a look here at the debt theme itself, so one of the most things that they were trying to seek out is help. So they wanted to get advice on how to get out of debt consolidation, and also debt collectors. So you've got the two sides here. So debt is actually a really interesting thing, and it's something that banks marketing strategy, then being able to assist people out of debt is probably key for them. What they're doing more on their desktop is how to. So this is where they're wanting to do a lot more in-depth research, and they're wanting to find out tips and tricks, and this is not just a quick search, this is an in-depth search. Then we look at loan calculator. So they're looking at things like personal loans. But when you look at mobile, this is where a lot of financial institution brand names keep coming up. So Westpac and CommBank. So the people that are searching on their mobile phones already have their financial institution in mind, and they're actually looking for that product. On the desktop, investment loans and home loans. So the bigger, chunkier loans, people are not really looking for on their mobile. They're looking for more on their desktop. Credit cards, so on their mobile they're looking at for credit card reviews, best rewards and low interest, all the fun things that come with credit cards. However, what was interesting is on the desktop, non-bank credit cards such as Virgin Money, Woolworths, Coles have all got credit cards now. They are more likely to be searched for on the desktop than actual financial institution credit cards which were done on the mobile. And obviously application, it's much easier to apply on a desktop than a mobile. And then of course tax came up. So what they're looking for is a calculator, tax brackets, how much tax will I get back was one of the most commonly searched themes within tax. I think everybody wants to know that. And then on the desktop, e-tax, tax rates and lodging. So actually physically lodging your tax online. Now, I mentioned that I wanted to cover two categories in short because I found them quite interesting. So food and beverage was the #1 industry in mobile search. And when I actually delved into that, it's because this is things like recipes, events such as the noodle markets, and also restaurant and cafe reviews are included in this. So a lot of people, I think once again of my own cooking habits, I'll go to a recipe, I'll search for a recipe on my mobile. If you're out and about and there's some event on and you want information on it, you turn to your mobile phone. Then if we look at desktop, they're more likely to want to look for supermarkets, complex dishes and complaints. So complex dishes were, interestingly enough, very detailed recipe search terms such as 10-hour slow-cooked roast beef. So those really, for me, difficult complex dishes and recipes are more likely to be searched for on a desktop than on a mobile. Then we look at health, and this is health. The reason I include health is because it really taps into that privacy and personal device which I was mentioning before. It was #3 in the industry in mobile search overall. And a lot of the main things that people were searching for were health issues. So what is this rash? I have a cough, I have chest pain, back pain. And it's actually quite concerning looking at the search data because, you know, there is, I recently remember reading something around the dangers of Google Doctor, and the search term list has basically backed this up. People are going to Google to be diagnosed on all sorts of issues. The other thing that came up was pregnancy. So people wanting to know pregnancy symptoms, but also they were pregnant and they were feeling different things. And the first thing that they do is turn to Google. You know, when I spoke to my sister about this, who's had a child, she said she was experiencing funny pains and she didn't want to talk to a doctor because she thought a doctor would laugh at her, so she went to Google. So this is where brands can understand search terms to be able to assist and bring customers to them, rather than rely on them to be diagnosed through Google Doctor. And then personal. So personal stuff was more around depression and mental health and stuff like that. So, you know, some really strong themes in the health category. What they were looking for more on their desktop was health organisations. So this is such as Diabetes Australia, the Cancer Council, etc. When they're looking for health insurance, and they're doing a comparison, but also one that came up really high was Weight Watchers. So people that are wanting to lose weight and actually sign up to a good in-depth program are looking to desktop search for that. So the last section on search languages, so this was really interesting for me because I always had this perception that the amount of characters that you use in a search for desktop would be larger than that on a mobile device. It's easier to type, you'd be able to include a bit more. However, when we actually looked at an analysis, we found it was the opposite. So what I did here is I took the retail industry as an example and I picked the top 1,000 search terms by device. So top 1,000 for mobile and top 1,000 for desktop. And as you can see here, the total words in the top 1,000 search terms was just over 2,500. The total characters with spaces was 15,800. And then I worked out the average characters per search, which was 15.9. When you look at desktop, the average characters per search was at 13.1. So in fact, people were including more characters in their search on a mobile device than they are on the desktop. I think that's because they are wanting a more exact and definite answer, like where is the closest Woolworths near me? So because they're out and about, they're wanting an exact answer. This is where those questions, what is, where is, how to, and they're giving as much information as they can to be able to get back the correct answer. So as I mentioned before, these are the kind of question searches, how to, where is, can I? They're wanting the exact answer, so they're typing in things like chemist warehouse near me. On the desktop, the searches are more likely to be full URL searches, or they're going to be browsing styled searches, so cheap chemist. So they're not even really kind of putting in anything too exact. So the top tips in closing, as I've shown you before, the Australian consumers are more mobile than ever before. In fact, if it's ever going to be the year of the mobile, then we're either here or very, very close to it. If you aren't including mobile into your marketing mix or mobile search, you are missing out on a huge fair chunk of your audience. So that's something to consider. Mobile search usage is vastly different, not only by industry, but also within themes within those industries. So as I mentioned in some of the examples before, mobile search, when you look at travel versus banking, is incredibly different, and then the keywords within those are also used very differently. So how are your keywords performing that you are using? Are your competitors bidding on your brand and stealing your customers? That's incredibly valuable insight that you need to know. So you need to get a complete view of your search activity. Understand the exact search language, of your customers are using. Make sure you're targeting the right search terms, and remember your product could be searched for using multiple terms. So search terms can also be used to assist content, and this is something that's really strong. If you are producing content, then keep on top of what your customers are actually talking about, what they're wanting, and you can do this via search. But most importantly, search by device for most industries is used differently, so understand when and how to implement search to get the biggest benefit. If desktop is used at the start of the purchase cycle, then utilise the search there, and if it's used towards the end of the purchase cycle, then implement mobile search. So understanding where the different devices and search kicks in will make your campaign perform a lot stronger. So in closing, obviously this is all a bit of a whirlwind and quite a lot to take in. We actually have a mobile search report coming out this week. This goes into a little bit more detail and context around some of the themes. If you would like a copy, please contact us at the below email address or reach out to your rep and we can get one across to you. So in closing, that's it from mobile search. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was useful. And if you have any questions, please fire away.
Thanks, Alice. That was great. And to everyone who's still on, that concludes the content portion of the webinar. Alice, we did have 2 questions come through during your presentation, so if you don't mind, I'll just ask away. So the first question we did get is, are you able to profile demographically who uses particular search terms?
Good question. So yes, in Audience View, you are able to build out a segment based on search terms, and from the profile that I showed you initially, you are able to determine who is more likely to use this group of search terms versus this group of search terms. So yes, that is doable through Audience View.
Great. And we have time for just the last one, which is, are we able to get insight into our competitors' search strategy?
Yes. So as I mentioned briefly just before, you can actually have a look to see what terms your competitors are using and whether or not they're using your terms. You can actually have a look at the terms that they're not using as well and take advantage of those ones. So yes, you can also do that.
Great, thanks for that. All right, thank you. And as a reminder, this webinar has been recorded and a playback link will be shared with you. Please feel free to reach out to us via the contact information on your screen and we'll get back to you. Thanks again, Alice, for your presentation, and we hope you found today's content useful.